Today's lesson is about recognizing allusions in novels and drama, and sometimes how they actually sometimes originate from novels and drama. Here is one that you might have heard before and that you might have found troublesome to understand, and that is called Catch 22. You say something is a Catch 22. Now, what does it mean? Now, a Catch 22 is any absurd or no-win situation. Absurd or no-win situation. It's a Catch 22. You don't really know whether you should go this way or that way because nothing makes sense. Now, this Catch 22 actually originated in a novel by Joseph Heller. And it was called Catch 22. And the setting is the World War II Air Force situation, which explored the absurdity of war and military life. Now, an airman would sometimes feel that the mission that the Air Force wants to accomplish, and they're going onto this mission in the air, is just too dangerous, and they want to please apply not to be part of it. So they go to the authorities and they say to the authorities, look, I don't want to be, I want to please apply in writing not to be part of this mission. And then he would be told, in order to be able to apply not to go on to that mission, he would have to be declared insane. Now, in order to apply, by definition, you would have to be of sane mind. An insane person wouldn't have this wish or wouldn't know how to apply. So Catch 22 then means that is how they actually force you to stay. You don't have an option because you can't go this way or that way. Very strange expression. But sometimes you get those kinds of situations in life and you say, okay, that's a Catch 22. Where am I going to go? So another one that you might have heard of is the 11th hour. It almost sounds ominous. It's very often used in that context, at the 11th hour, the dawn is nigh, something's going to happen. But it actually means at the latest possible time. You do something at the 11th hour, or you join at the 11th hour, it is the latest possible time. It comes from the Bible and the parable of the laborers in Matthew 20, which says, and when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a denarius. So it's about actually these laborers who, even though they started very late in the 11th hour, they were treated fairly, they were given their money. Now this 11th hour is used very commonly in novels, in drama, in music albums, right? In documentaries. This is actually a documentary by Leonardo DiCaprio that he used it as well, and that's the title of the documentary. So it's used very often, and here it is still an indirect reference because they don't specifically quote the 11th hour as from the Bible or something. They use it generally as a reference point, so it's an allusion. Now, once again, we've got this very strange situation in Hamlet, where, and we've already spoken about Oedipus, right? That was in a legend, and it was part of Sophocles' tragedy. And you will remember that Oedipus killed his father, married his mother without knowing that those were the facts, and then, of course, stabbed out his eyes when he realized his mother committed suicide. And so we have that as a reference or as an allusion. And we all know how Sigmund Freud used it and then he coined the phrase, the Oedipus complex. We have already spoken about that. Now that happened in modern times, right? Now we suddenly get scholars going to Hamlet, the text. Now Hamlet being written around 1600, now think of it, about 1600, when there was no Oedipus complex as such, as mentioned. And they bring into the text almost indirectly this reference. And the thing is that both Sigmund Freud and Sophocles, all those people refer to the ancient myth, right? So the modern audience will know all of this. They will know this reference. They will know this allusion. And now they reflect upon Hamlet and what he did, how he spoke to his mother, how he was obsessed with her being with another man. It's almost as though he was jealous, as though he didn't want her to be with his father's brother. And the terrible way in which he treated poor Ophelia, how he said to her, "Get thee to a nunnery. Why? Wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Are you going to be like my mother? Are you going to breed a sinner like me? I don't want anything of this. You go away, and I'm against women." And so people, modern scholars, look at this and they try to project this allusion onto Hamlet and ask, doesn't he perhaps have an Oedipus complex? Isn't there something inside him that actually desires his mother? And then they try to find reasons why that is so. So can you see, it teems within literature, and it goes this way and that way, and it's used over and over in cross references, etc. It's very complex. You have to look very well and think very well when you deal with allusions in novels and drama. So, for instance, if you look at Macbeth, there are several allusions made, many more than these. I'm just mentioning a few in Macbeth. For instance, Bellona, you can go and look that up if you're perhaps studying that. There's a reference to that, and I call it a reference because it says he's Bellona's bride. It is used as a metaphor. We've already spoken about the reference to Oedipus because Macbeth says, "Ha! I pluck out my eyes. I cannot bear to know or to think or to see that I've actually killed the king." There's the mention of Tarquin and Lucrece, where Macbeth sees the similarity between him and Tarquin, and he has to steal up to the king's room to go and kill him. And the king is his family. The king is his king. And the king is a good man. And he feels that he now has to steal up to his room, take a dagger and kill him. And he's already feeling so guilty. He feels like Tarquin, who betrayed his friend and raped his friend's wife. While in the safety of his friend's home. In the same way, the king was also the guest. And he feels that he's so betraying this king, which is so much of him, family, friend, guest, and he's betraying him just like Tarquin. So there's the Gorgon, of course, that he feels that it's something that he cannot look at. Go and look up the Gorgon. It's the one with the hairs and the snakes in the hair. There's a reference to Mark Antony and Caesar. There is a reference to Acheron, which is the river in hell, right? Hecate says to the witches that she will meet them there at Acheron, the river in hell. So all of these things are very important. You must look at how it's used and where it's mentioned, whether it's a reference or an allusion, doesn't matter. It has some bearing on the text. For instance, as I said, that had to do with the guilt. that Macbeth felt. And Alcuin, it has to do with the evil suggested, because it's a river in hell, and how the witches are associated with evil. Then, just to give you an idea as well from one of the novels, perhaps you're not going to study this novel, but to give you an idea how it works in a novel, it does so very, very clearly in the picture of Dorian Gray. Now, you must have heard the term narcissism. In psychology, he's a real narcissist. Of course, it refers back to also mythical times where Narcissus fell in love with his own image in the water. He was just a young man and very full of himself, very cold towards his girlfriend. I'm not going to go into everything, it's a long story, but he basically, if you are a narcissist, and you are like Narcissus, you have a fixation with yourself, very egocentrical, and with your physical appearance, right? Now, even if something like that is not necessarily mentioned once, say, in a book, let's say in this book it's never mentioned, it is so clear that Dorian Gray is a typical narcissist. He is totally obsessed with himself, and he feels nothing for anybody else. He's incapable of having feelings for other people, real feelings. And narcissism is a major theme in the picture of Dorian Gray. We see both Dorian Gray and Lord Henry exhibiting these tendencies, narcissistic tendencies. And Lord Henry actually supports it very much, and he encourages Dorian to see himself as beautiful and perfect and so forth. But of course, this narcissism is the ultimate cause of Dorian's demise. Because for various reasons. But the one aspect that stands out too here is his relationship with Sybil. Sybil is a girl that he falls in love with, but he actually doesn't fall in love with her. She's an actress. And he doesn't really fall in love with her as a person. He falls in love with the actress and the fact that she portrays these roles so well. It's about the beauty of the portrayal. It's not about Sybil, who is a person. Sybil, of course, then falls in love with him. And that is too terrible, because now he has to face a real person, and she wants to leave the theatre and just be with him. And she's comparable with a mountain nymph in the legend, the myth of Narcissus, and the mountain nymph called Echo. Because when she reveals herself to Narcissus, the original, he rejects her. So the moment poor Sybil becomes vulnerable as a person, and she's not this public person who fulfills these roles so beautifully, she's just like an object. No, now she's a person, and then he rejects her, and she cannot take it. She commits suicide, and then of course he takes no responsibility for that. And also in the same way, Echo spends her whole life in solitude, and nothing of Echo remains but an echo. So, as far as allusions go, remember just a few things that we've talked about, that you must distinguish between an allusion and an illusion. It's not the same thing. Get that straight in your mind before anything else. Don't write about an illusion in a play and actually mean an allusion, because it's two different things. The one, as we've just been talking about, is an indirect reference to a person, an event, or a thing which is in a different context. But for instance, you'll say to somebody, I didn't understand her allusion to Finnegan's Wake because I haven't read the book. So how am I supposed to have caught on to that? I haven't read the book. Do you understand? The allusion, the reference, the indirect reference to an event out of that current text. Whereas an illusion is something totally different. It's a deceptive appearance, a false idea. Like you'll say, for instance, mirages are nothing more than illusions. It's fabricated by your mind. It's just there. And then remember that we also distinguish between allusion and reference. A reference is direct. As we said, there is a direct reference to Icarus, the fall of Icarus. It's a direct reference, but the other two paintings are indirectly alluded to, like we talked about in the previous lesson. So a reference direct and an allusion indirect, left up to the reader or the viewer to figure out. Most important about everything we've said about allusions, and you can see how it absolutely just figures that in literature you cannot understand literature without knowing about them. But the thing is, what about them? What are you supposed to know about that? You must remember that relevance is key. So there's no point in saying, oh, here's a reference to Narcissus. Narcissus was, here's a reference to Icarus. Icarus was, blah, 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 blah. What does it have to do with that text? How does that illustrate or enhance the meaning of that specific part? How does the reference, for instance, to what we said about Echo and the legend of Narcissus, what does it have to do with Dorian and his relationship with Sybil? In the same way as Narcissus only thought about himself and he didn't want to become vulnerable to other people, that is exactly why Dorian Gray can be seen as a narcissist. And in the same way, he can also not relate to people as people. It's all about beauty and himself, etc. Thank you for listening. Bye.